Hey guys, in this hour-long video, we're going to be looking step by step at the complete application of the C-Quartz TiO2 ceramic coating on this Mercedes. Not only are we looking at the practical step-by-step application, so you'll know exactly how to do this, which products to use, which tools to use when we're done, but we're also diving into the business aspect here, talking about numbers, winter detailing, thriving in the winter through high-ticket offers like this, and many, many more things. Now, you guys are looking at the before of this vehicle, and just to give you a little bit of context as we dive in here, and you can see what the paint looks like before we touch it, this particular vehicle is new to my customer and is now on the maintenance schedule. In addition to that, as we move into the wintertime here in Nashville, Tennessee, we are going to be putting a ceramic coating on it. The first half of this video is going to be completely ceramic preparation, and the second half is going to be paint correction and ceramic coating application. Now let's dive first and foremost into the preparation and some of the basic tools and products that we're using here, as well as some of the business end that I want to get into before the actual application. First of all, I'm using my Sunjo electric pressure washer here. This is the one I use in 99.9% of all of my videos, and I'm simply degreasing the sidewalls of the tire as well as the wheel wells, then addressing the face of the wheels as well as the inner barrel of the wheels. Now, the degreaser that I'm using to address the sidewalls of the tires as well as the wheel wells is the Knockout degreaser from Renegade's Professional Detailer Series line. It comes in a gallon jug. I've got it diluted about 5-to-1 here. There is a tire dressing on the tires, but with barely any scrubbing, and this product, it comes off very easily, coupled with the high pressure from the pressure washer. And of course, the wheel wells here are fabric. They're coated in fabric, helps deaden the noise when you're actually driving. Happens very often with these luxury vehicles, especially the higher end BMWs, Mercedes, sort of that line of vehicle, but extremely easy to clean here because not only the newness of the vehicle, but also of course because of the product, coupled with that long handled feathered wheel well brush and the electric pressure washer. Now you can see here as I'm scrubbing the inner barrel of the wheel, I'm using my classic detailing brushes and Speedmaster brushes, but the product I'm using is from Hydra Silex. You're going to see in this video I combined a ton of different products in many different ways to address different situations. People ask all the time, do you use one company's products? The answer is no, I never do that because it is always case by case, and I need to switch products, switch company, switch brand, depending on what I'm dealing with. So this is Hydra Silex's wheel cleaner. It is non-acidic, and that's actually why I'm using it in this situation, because not only are these AMG wheels, and they're not necessarily coated the exact same way that your classic factory market wheels are coated, but these are sort of aftermarket, and they actually have been repaired because of some curb rash that happened on a couple of the wheels, so they actually had a wheel-specific detailer come out and fix the wheels, and so you can see actually in certain lighting, they're a little bit of a different color than the other two wheels, though to anyone who's probably not a detailer, you wouldn't recognize any difference. However, I always implement a fair amount of risk management when I'm dealing with any aftermarket wheels or wheels that have been repaired, repainted, and that's why I'm not using an acidic wheel cleaner. I'm always reaching for the non-acidic, and this one works absolutely fantastically. Now, one thing to note here is the inner barrel of these particular wheels are actually coated a little bit differently than the outside. They do this very often because the brake dust is corrosive, and so on these specific types of wheels, you'll see a bit of a rougher, more abrasive material on the inner part, a substance on the inner part of the wheel that actually makes it very easy to clean and actually hinders the brake dust from corroding into the metal at a very high level, which makes it great for detailers like myself. Now, as I continue addressing the wheels, tires, and wheel wells, I want to get into a bit of the business side and my relationship with this particular customer. This is a relatively new maintenance client, and this is actually going to be the first winter that I maintenance this vehicle through the winter. You guys know I depend very heavily on my maintenance clients, and this is the way that I actually suggest building a detailing business. It's one of the best ways to not only survive, but also thrive at a very high level through the winter when you have recurring revenue coming into your detailing business from clients that you see on a monthly, bi-monthly, tri-monthly, annual basis, whatever that might be, but generally speaking on anywhere between a 30, 60 to 90 90-day basis. This is a great way to have income already lined up into what I call your future bank account moving into the winter. Wintertime is a time where detailers really struggle for obvious reasons. In many ways, in the wintertime, people are not thinking about taking care of their vehicles, but they are wanting to protect them moving into the wintertime before the harshness of the elements actually sets in. And that is the situation we're dealing with right now. A video a couple days ago that I actually published talked about this priority that you need to make in the beginning stages of wintertime, simply because there are ideal times in the year where clients are actually prioritizing and thinking about being preventative, proactive, and protecting their vehicle's paint. And this is one of those times. The other major time is moving out of winter into springtime and summertime. Moving into the wintertime, clients are thinking about snow, the salt on the roads, the fact that they're not going to be cleaning their car on a regular basis when it's freezing cold outside. And given in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live and where I operate my mobile detailing business, our winters don't get too harsh, but in January and February, we are dealing with sometimes weather in the 20s, most of the time in the 30s and 40s. And because of that, people actually have a desire and make it a priority to protect their vehicles moving into this season. And that's why we're putting the ceramic on this particular vehicle. This is one of the best times to offer a higher ticket service like ceramic coating, simply because it's one of those times people are most willing to pay for it. This is also the best time, in my opinion, to start the conversation with your maintenance customers, simply because it is not only going to be in their best interest moving into the wintertime, but it is also going to be in your best interest. In fact, in the wintertime, I try to line up only vehicles with ceramic coatings on them, simply because it minimizes the product I use, minimizes the amount of water I have to use, minimizes the amount of time more than anything that I'm sitting outside in the cold working, and all of those things together make for a very successful winter, in my opinion. Now, one of the most important things regarding the ceramic coating conversation when you are having the conversation with your customer is to avoid being overly technical. This is something that I have noticed many detailers do, and it really shoots themselves in the foot and hinders their whole ceramic coating game, in that many people are under the impression that as they give more information to the customer and come off quote unquote as more of the expert, the customer trusts them more, is more willing to get some sort of higher ticket offer like this. And in my opinion and in my experience and in my own what I might call split testing of sometimes approaching it in a complicated way and sometimes approaching it in a very simplistic way and explaining and dissecting a ceramic coating in a very simplistic way, customers really respond to this conversation when it's communicated simply. One of the best ways to do this is use simple analogies that allow the customer to understand what a ceramic coating actually is. This isn't the time to get into paint depth and paint readers and gauges and what sort of paint correction and preparation it takes to get into the ceramic coating application. This is a time to explain the longevity. This is the time to explain the 3-year, 5-year, 2-year, whatever coating it is, the durability. It's the time to explain the kind of value they're going to get over the next several years having this on the vehicle and having it maintained. This is the time to explain the visual aspect and the visual appeal that they'll be able to enjoy, as well as in the resale value of the car when they have the coating on. Those are the things to hit on when you're dealing with the conversation of ceramics. It's very important to make sure you're focusing the conversation on the things that the customer actually cares about. The customer doesn't care about what it takes to put the ceramic coating on. The customer doesn't care about the technicalities of whether or not their paint is hard paint or soft paint. The customer cares about the money, the longevity, the visual appeal, and the value they're going to get long term. And those are the things we need to be overly focused on. Now, moving back into the technical aspect of this particular detail, I am going to be using another Renegade product here that I use in many of my videos. I'm not only going to be using it in my foam cannon, but I'm also going to be using it for the agitation wash with the 2-bucket method that you'll see in just a second. And I've got my Renegade foam cannon here that I'm using as well. You can see that really good foam that's coming out. This is Sunstorm. This is just a very versatile car soap and a very affordable car soap that's a part of their professional line again. So it does come in the gallon size, and that's really why I like it. I can use about 4 to 5 ounces in my foam cannon and get really great results here, as you can see. So I am going to be doing this pre-foaming with the Sunstorm, as well as, once again, that 2-bucket method. Now, some of you guys are wondering, how are you doing this on black paint out in the middle of the sun? Because yes, technically, it is sunny outside here. There's a few things to take into context here as mobile detailers when you're washing cars in the sun, particularly black paint. Number one, it is relatively cold outside, so it's probably about 55 degrees right now in this particular part of the video, and I believe it's about 10:30 a.m. Water spots do not form the same way in the wintertime as they do in the summertime. That's probably pretty obvious, but what I mean is, while yes, the sun is out in both of those particular seasons, because of the coolness of the air, the water is not flash drying on the paint. In fact, I could leave the water on the paint for a relatively long period of time without having any significant water spots form. And because of that, I'm really not worried about washing it in the sun in this situation. I'm also not worried about rushing to get it done or rushing to dry it, as you're going to see. The other thing to think about here is the fact that I am going to be preparing this paint with some simple paint correction, and because of that, even if we did have some surface water spots form that were not taken off with the agitation wash, they weren't taken off with the Iron X, and they weren't taken off with the clay bar, they would absolutely be taken off with even a mild polish. So once again, for many reasons in this situation, washing in the sun is just not going to be an issue. And yes, it's black paint. Yes, it can be a bear, but in this situation, once again, it's just not a big deal. Now, outside of that, I am going to be moving to the agitation wash here with the 2-bucket method. Many of you wonder when I use the 2-bucket method and when I don't. The reason I'm using it in this particular situation is because, once again, this is a very nice vehicle, very new vehicle, and we want to make sure that we are not introducing any swirls at any level whatsoever. When I'm dealing with the mom's minivan that hasn't been detailed in 10 years, it's a completely different story. But when we're dealing with the higher end luxury Mercedes that we're about to put a ceramic coating on, of course, those two things are just not the same. I'm using a microfiber wash mitt from Microfiber Madness that's very high end as well. It's a bit more expensive, but I do like it a lot. And of course, like I said, I'm using the Sunstorm foam soap in my agitation wash 2-bucket method as well. Now, as I go around washing the vehicle, there's a few things for you guys to note. To give a little bit more context to this entire detail, it is broken up into 2 different days. So this first day that you're watching right now is all preparation, and it will be ended after the paint prep stage. So this is broken up into 2 days simply because it's always easiest to apply a ceramic coating in around 2 days, not only for your own body's sake and the fact that you're doing a bit of manual labor, but also for your own focus sake. You're going to be able to apply that ceramic coating with a bit more surety that you're doing it the right way when you can split it up and give yourself a bit of a break. And this is not something that customers complain about. It's something they completely understand. And you also have to keep in mind the type of customer you're attracting when you're doing a ceramic coating. You're not attracting the person who wants things done quickly, and you're not attracting the person that wants things done cheaply. They want things done well, and they are willing to pay for it. And because of that, that is how I would suggest getting this done. While I have applied ceramic coatings, many I might add, in my day, in a single day, in a 24-hour day, I wouldn't necessarily suggest it in every situation. The other thing that's going to make this a bit more challenging is the fact that it is black paint. Now, some people say Mercedes paint is extremely hard. Some people say it's right in the middle. To be honest with you guys, for those of you who are worried about hard and soft paint, I have worked on Mercedes paint that is hard. I've worked on Mercedes paint that's soft. And my best advice to you is let it be a case-by-case scenario. It's not something to get overwhelmed with in the moment. Now, as we finish up the agitation wash, we are going to be moving to the Iron X, or the iron removing stage, next, which I'm also using another Renegade product, once again called their iron remover, their Voodoo iron remover, and I'm going to be spraying it all over the paint, agitating a little bit with some water as well as my wash mitt, letting it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes, then washing it off. Then I'm going to move to the clay barring stage. Another question that gets frequently asked is, do you clay bar or do you use an iron remover first? And people have different opinions on this, and I actually do different things at different times just based on how I feel and what I want to do. Some people are going to tell you that if you use the iron remover before, you're going to minimize even more the micro abrasions that you're putting in the paint when you use the clay bar because of the contaminants that are being pulled off chemically with the iron remover. I don't know how true that is, and it would be difficult to run a legitimate controlled study to actually test that theory. However, I do understand the logic of it. I will say many times I have used a clay bar before I've used the iron remover with the logic that simply says, let me get the majority, the heavy lifting off with the clay bar. Then I'll pick up any of the leftover with the iron remover and actually let the iron remover work a little bit more efficiently because there's not so much to grab. And honestly, I think the logic of that makes just as much sense as the other argument. So once again, I can update you guys later, but I've been doing this for several years and I really have a hard time telling the difference between either of those two strategies. Now, this is once again an area where you really don't need to be too concerned, particularly in this climate and in this weather moving into wintertime, having the Iron X be on the black paint in the middle of the sun because once again, it's not too hot outside. Nothing's going to be flash drying on the paint. Now, when you guys are using an iron remover on the paint, something I always suggest you do is what you see me doing here. After I spray it all over the car, I'm using the pressure washer standing back probably about 3 to 5 feet, and I'm just spraying some water, letting the pressure and the water move that iron remover around a little bit, getting some lubricity from the water and adding a little bit of movement so I can spread over the paint a little bit better. It also activates the chemical as well. I am going to be agitating it very, very quickly with not any sort of abrasive approach or aggressive approach. I'm simply moving the mitt across the paint so that I make sure I get a very good spread of the iron remover all across the black paint. And then I am going to be washing it off, following up with the clay bar in the necessary areas. One of the things you guys are going to notice here is that I do dry off the windows and all of the glass parts of this vehicle first. Generally speaking, water spots are going to accrue on the glass first, particularly in the sun, and that's also the most frustrating area on a car to deal with water spots in my opinion. So I always make sure I get all of the water, or at least 90% of it, off of the glass first, and I can deal with the paint as I need to. So I'm simply going to wash all of this off the paint. Make sure I spend a fair amount of time rinsing, just because iron remover and the chemicals that are in these iron removers are not something I ever like to leave on the paint for more than the necessary time for them to actually do their job. So I do use a lot of time here to rinse very thoroughly. In fact, sometimes I do even suggest using just the hose and a sort of garden spray nozzle to sort of flood the paint. Sometimes it can be difficult to remove 100% of an iron remover with a pressure washer because you have so much air mixed with the water here for obvious reasons, which can be very effective in other areas of detailing. But here, a lot of times I find it best simply to use sort of like a shower mode of a garden spray nozzle to really flood the paint so it can get into every area and make sure that chemical is completely rinsed off. Now, after I dry off the windows with a simple waffle weave drying towel, I'm going to be moving to the clay bar. I'm going to clay bar every single area of the exterior, the glass, the roof, the windshield, every painted surface, every chrome surface as well, and then I'll be moving it into the garage. Now, to jump back into a little bit of business content here. This is a $1,200 job, a ceramic coating job, so the question has to be asked, Luke, how do I actually get a customer to pay me $1,200 in order to put the ceramic on their car? Because we can be really good at applying them, we can be really good with our ceramic detailing ability, but if you can't turn that into profit in the sense of selling to a customer, it means absolutely nothing. The very first thing that is so fundamental here that always gets skipped over is the type of customer you're selling to, and this has to be the first thing that is a part of this equation. What I mean is, this particular customer fits a few things. Number one, he's a generally high-income individual. He's a business owner. He's an entrepreneur. This makes up about 90% of the clients that I have. These are the type of clients that I love targeting for many, many reasons. That's the first qualification. Secondly, this particular vehicle is not necessarily his daily driver, as you can see kind of the GMC, the Yukon right next to me on the left there, but it is the nice car that he owns. It's kind of his prized possession car, right? And many of these guys have one of those sort of prized possession cars. It's garage kept. It's going to be maintained. It's his baby, right? Outside of that, it's got black paint. Very, very difficult to maintain black paint. In fact, people who buy a new car with black paint are very aware of this. They're always talking about, man, I need a way to make sure the paint stays in really good condition. Now, on top of all of that, this vehicle is new to him, and it is very recently new to him. So this is something I speak about a lot, but all of those things together put this customer in this, what I would call, perfect ceramic coating potential box. It makes absolutely no sense for me to not push this service for all of these reasons. I always make sure this becomes the priority conversation when the vehicle is relatively new, just purchased, because this is when someone is most emotionally tied to it. It's not a manipulation technique. It's not any of that. It is very literally a great win-win. It's easy to apply the ceramic in the beginning. They want it more than in the beginning than at any other time of the ownership of the vehicle. Now, that being said, what I'm putting on the front grille here, and the reason why I'm doing it in this order, as you will see, is number one, this is what the Ultra Shine Detail Spray. It's very simply kind of like a silicone-based dressing that's very, very evenly spread. It's kind of a self-leveling formula, and I use it on all of kind of black trim, difficult-to-reach areas, particularly on the front of the vehicle. The reason I'm putting that on at this particular stage and in this particular sequence is because we do get a little bit of overspray on the paint. So now that we've completely decontaminated and cleaned the car at every level, I'm using Optimum Paint Prep to, again, prepare the paint before we actually polish it. We want to take off any oils, any sealants, any waxes, any possible chemical that could be left over on the paint with the paint prep. But I want to make sure that I do get these dressings onto the specific areas of the car, like the front grille, before I do this, because once again, the paint prep will actually strip off that overspray very easily. And so all of this is a very, very technical sequence. Now, when it comes to the Optimum Paint Prep, I do like to use a bit of a liberal amount just because I kind of like to spray it, let it dwell for a second, and then work it in. I'll go through like 2 to 3 microfiber towels in this particular process. You probably do not have to use as much paint prep as I use, and not that I'm using an overwhelming amount. You obviously can see in the video exactly how much I use, but this is an area where I will lean on the more liberal side before I will lean on the conservative side of chemical, just because this is a fairly important sort of unseen part of the process. We want to make sure that our paint correction is as optimized as it possibly could be, and I don't want to leave anything on the paint that could potentially hurt me in that stage. You can see I was actually talking with my customer in the garage just then, hence building relationships with customers. But you can see how I'm using the paint prep to actually wipe up the overspray from the front grille area here, and this is my point in making sure that you have a very specific sequence that you're using as you go throughout a ceramic prep like this. Your sequence is going to be extremely, extremely important. Now, we are kind of nearing the end of the first day of the preparation here, but before I leave, I am going to be dressing the tires. I'm going to get into this a little bit more in just a second, but I'm using Chemical Guys VRP, not diluted at all. It's just full strength here with my Turtleback tire application sponge, and I'm going to be applying this gel coating to the tire first. I'm going to be doing this to all 4 tires. Now, I am going to be actually following up the next day, which we're going to jump to in a second in the video, with another tire dressing. This is a great way to put a serious dressing, a serious barrier, kind of ceramic durability, if you will. Of course, it's not that it doesn't have the longevity of a ceramic or the durability, but this is kind of one of my little secrets where I'm going to let you guys in a little bit and show you a part of my ceramic process on these higher end vehicles. So I am finishing the day here with the Chemical Guys VRP on all of the tires. So we have officially washed, cleaned, decontaminated the paint at the highest level, prepped the paint with Optimum Paint Prep, and dressed the tires so we can come back the next day, which is right now in the video. As you can see, I'm wearing a little bit different clothes here, and I got my hat on. So guys, I am using the Stoner aerosol can dressing here, tire dressing. The Chemical Guys VRP has had about 14 hours to totally cure to the sidewall of the tire, and now I can use this tire shine to give it a little bit more pop as well as a little bit more durability, because for the next 48 hours, this vehicle is going to be sitting in the car. So the aerosol can spray here from Stoner has plenty of time to cure to the paint. Now, without further ado, it is obviously time to move to the paint correction stage as soon as I get to my customer's house today, simply because I did all the prep work yesterday. I dusted the vehicle off very quickly as I got there this morning to make sure there was no dust or any sort of, particular contaminants on the paint, and we are moving into the paint correction stage. So let's set up the context for the paint correction that we're doing now. So you can see, obviously, I'm using my Rupe's Bigfoot, but I'm also using the Perfect Finish polish from Sonax. I'm going to comment about this here in just a second. I've got my LRH21 from Rupe's, and I've also got my Buff Bright Light on the right side of my DA polisher here. As far as the foam pad pad that I'm using here, it's a spider pad from, I believe, 3D Car Care, and it is very simply one of their finishing pads. It's a bit more on the medium side. It's not what I would call your classic black foam finishing pad that you might get from Lake Country, but this is absolutely one of my favorite pads for a job like this, particularly on black paint. Now, I've also got a light, kind of a studio light on the left that I do move around the car, and you're going to see this in different shots and different scenes here as I move around, because the lighting is obviously something that's going to be very important as you are correcting paint, particularly black paint, and particularly Mercedes black paint. You're going to read on the forums that people tend to have a bit of difficulty with Mercedes paint for different reasons, but this actually came out very, very nicely, and you're going to see that as we kind of move around the vehicle. Now, I want to comment a little bit on the product itself, the Sonax product, because there are a few things to say. Number one, this is one of their, not a finishing polish necessarily, but yes, a finishing polish, right? It's called their Perfect Finish, but it does still actually cut at a certain level that I would call is a bit deeper, a bit more aggressive than other finishing polishes that generally I'm using. This particular polish I would put on the same level actually as another company that I love to use, the Menzerna polishes, a bit more expensive. The Sonax is a little bit less expensive, but it worked about as well. Actually, I was extremely impressed with it. Now, as far as the dusting goes, this was an extremely, what you might call, dusty product, okay? There was a lot of dust kicked up from the polish itself, but outside of that, it was very, very easy to work with and very, very easy to remove from the surface of the paint. It's also one of those where we would say a very, very little amount goes a very, very long way. A very long way. But you can see actually the dust that's kind of sitting on the other parts of the paint, and as I go around, you're going to see even more dusting. To let you guys in on a little bit of the process that you're going to see repeated here, of course, I actually use the polish on the paint first, but I'm always going to follow up with my green sort of all-purpose towel to wipe off the majority of the polish on the face of the surface. But then I have my blue towel that I'm going to be having some of the Optimum Paint Prep sprayed onto that, as well as some really soft detailing brushes that I use to kind of get in the crevices. You might be wondering why I didn't tape off the paint here. It's simply because at this point in my life and in my detailing experience, and with this particular context, it just doesn't require it for what I'm going to do. Yes, there are times where I tape off the surfaces, I tape off the contour lines, I tape off the body lines, I tape off the, places where the door meets the fender, where you're going to get some polish build up in there if you run the pad over it, and especially with a product that dusts like this. The reason why I'm not is simply because it's very easy for me to follow up with my blue towel, with my dusting brush, and with some Optimum Paint Prep, and just pull any of that dust and pull any of that residue remaining polish in any surface that stays there. It's extremely easy for me to do. It's not labor intensive. It's not difficult. And I do it in between each section of polishing, so it never dries to the paint. It never builds up, and it's extremely easy to deal with. In fact, it's less time consuming than it would be to tape off every single specific area that needed to be taped off. And that's why I'm doing it. It really comes down to a conservative time play on my part. Now, in addition to that, I want to talk a little bit about the technique here that I'm using to correct this paint. There's not a specific name for it, and it's going to be very difficult for me to communicate through a screen and through a microphone. But essentially, this is something that actually Jason Kilmer was showing me, and was something that he was telling me not to put on social media because people would take me down for it. But just to try to explain a little bit of the context, I was actually in Chicago with Jason Kilmer about a year ago, and he was showing me sort of an aggressive approach to take to what I would call this Mercedes. This black paint is a perfect thing to do this with. Essentially, we're using this finishing pad and this sort of medium cut but finishing polish, and using a fair amount of pressure pushed down onto the pad and onto the polisher, and then letting up pretty immediately, coming back over the same exact surface that you just finished with that high pressure, and doing that over and over and over again. So you can see in different parts of the video me pushing down and getting to the end of the line, pulling up pretty dramatically, and coming back over, pushing down, coming back over the line, pulled up. Then I'm also trying to really make sure that the pattern that you get, that you can see from the polish and the the circular polish, the circular pad makes, where it looks like almost you lined up 1,000 CDs next to each other in a straight line. I'm trying to make sure that at any point on any part of the surface, that those CDs, essentially would be the best analogy, those CDs, those polishing circles, are as lined up and as symmetric as they possibly can, because essentially it's telling me that I'm putting a very consistent level of pressure down onto the paint and using a pretty consistent speed with my polisher, when I can make sure those CDs are symmetric, those circles are symmetric, they're all lined up in a sort of very easy to look, visually appealing line. Essentially, when those are staggered, one of the indications that you're not putting a sort of consistent speed, a consistent pressure down on it, is that staggering. And that was something I thought was very valuable that Jason Kilmer sort of walked through with me about a year ago as we were actually doing some training together and teaching some classes together. But he is sort of a specialist in paint correction, so it was great to be able to learn from the best in some sense and not just from your own experience as well. So you can see here in the scene that I'm actually taking that detailing brush, like I was saying, that blue microfiber towel with the Optimum Paint Prep, and making sure that I'm pulling any of that dust and any of that residue left over from the polish in any of those cracks and crevices, just because it's easier to do that than it is to tape everything off as I go. Now let's talk about the paint correction conversation that I actually had with this customer, because you might be wondering, Luke, why are you only doing a sort of single stage polish? Why aren't you doing a two-stage polish to really increase the level of perfection of this paint to the highest level that it can? Well, there's obviously a lot of variables that go into something like this. Like I said, the owner of this car, my maintenance client who owns the Mercedes now, was not the previous owner. This car is new to him, but it's not new. I believe this is actually a 2018. It could be a 2019. I can't remember exactly now that I'm doing this voiceover. But one of the things to keep in mind here is this tightrope, this balance, this line that you must walk as a professional auto detailer, of finding a win-win that exists for you and your customer. So while yes, of course there's an option to do a two-stage polish with this paint, and we can eliminate virtually not only 100% of the swirls, but also really 100% of the even a bit deeper scratches, because this paint was in really good condition from the beginning. And so if we were to do that two-stage polish, we would get these amazing results. But I would have to tack on a fairly significant sort of extra price on top of the $1,200 that this job already is sort of standard up front for. And in addition to that, in communicating with the customer, explaining the nature of ceramic coatings, explaining the nature of paint correction, when you can communicate effectively in this area, your customer is going to understand that you're the expert and your suggestion is really going to be taken in many ways at face value, as it should be, especially if it is a good suggestion. And so the conversation, really to let you guys in kind of behind the veil here, went like this. Essentially, I was talking to my customer and saying, listen, customer, we could do a two-stage paint correction. Let me bring you out in the sun and explain to you a few things. Do you see all those swirls? Do you see this? I was explaining essentially the nature of swirls, what those swirls are, what paint correction is going to do. And by the end of the conversation, essentially the agreement and the conclusion and really the solution we came to was, yeah, you're not interested in perfecting it perfectly, because before this conversation, you didn't even know what swirl marks were. In fact, I had to just explain them to you. And so because I can tell you what kind of condition the paint is going to be in after even just a single stage, a one-stage polish with this great Sonax polish, you're going to be very satisfied with how this is going to look, especially with that TiO2 coating on top of it. I mean, it is going to look banging. And because of that, my customer was totally fine with just a single stage polish. And in fact, in many ways, I prefer to approach ceramic coating preparation this way. Yes, there are times when it's necessary to do these two-stage polishes, but one of the things actually to keep in mind in my ceramic coating world, which is actually what I do more than anything else, about 80% of what I do these days are ceramic coatings. In my ceramic coating world, more often than not, I am doing an actual single stage paint correction in the preparation phase, because I'm not dealing with vehicles that have been driven for 10 years before the ceramic gets applied, and therefore most of the vehicles that I'm seeing actually don't require a two-stage paint correction, because the paint is in such great condition from the outset of the interaction and before I actually see it to put the coating on. This is something to keep in mind with your customers. In many ways, the customers who want the ceramic coatings put on the paint are not necessarily super aware of what perfect paint looks like. And because of that, you need to walk the line as a detailer of what is best for you, what is best for your customer, what's best for your time, what's best for your customer's time. And in a lot of ways, this particular situation really represents the average of what my ceramic coating world looks like. Now, in addition to ceramic coatings being an amazing way to inject, a very high ticket item into your detailing business where you create a fair amount of cash flow with a single job, these are also one of the highest levels of word of mouth marketing sort of chains that you're going to notice happen in the detailing world. So immediately after I was actually done with this job, later that night, my customer texted me and said, "Hey, I've got all my neighbors coming over saying, oh my gosh, this looks like a new paint job. It looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor. Would you be interested in talking to them about doing certain things like this?" In fact, just today, before I made this video, one of his friends actually reached out to me. He has a really nice Bronco that was restored and completely repainted, and he wants to have a ceramic coating put on that really nice sort of like baby blue, royal blue Bronco. And so the reason I bring this up is because you do experience this sort of domino effect of referrals and word of mouth when you get into some of the specialized area, what I would call specialized area of detailing in the paint correction and ceramic coating world, particularly with guys. Actually, I've noticed this in many ways. The ceramic coating world, at least my ceramic coating world, is really made up of guys who have these higher end vehicles who are more concerned with the exterior. I've noticed a trend in my detailing world in that this is not always true, but it has been true enough and significant enough to mention. In general, just from a numbers point of view, from a statistical analysis, generally the women or the moms that I detail for are way more concerned with the interior of their vehicles, whereas the men seem to be more concerned with the exterior of their vehicles. Once again, this is not always true, but this has been true enough of the time to really mention because it has been a pattern. And so I have experienced just time and time again, particularly in the ceramic coating world, and this is really where most of my ceramic coating business comes from nowadays. In many ways, my detailing business began online, heavy website, heavy local optimization, but it turned into a lot of referrals and word of mouth as that online engine began to gain speed. And really the word of mouth sort of referral game is what you want most of your business to come to from long term, simply because your customers begin to sell you for them, or your customers sell you kind of on automatic, so you don't have to go in convincing, negotiating, all that sort of stuff. So even just from this one job, not only did it inject a fair amount of cash flow into my own pocket just because of the standard price of a job like this, but of course, this being a maintenance client, you're also creating deposits in your future bank account. In addition to that, you are gaining even more clientele from this one job. Even today, the text message I got was a very clear example of that. Now, it's worth mentioning, in my opinion, from a sales or a sort of marketing and really just a sales perspective, when you are having a ceramic coating conversation with your customer, if they're unsure about it, if they're not quite sure what a ceramic coating is in the first place, and really you're trying to sell the customer on getting a ceramic coating, I have found that the most important variable to focus in on in every way is the longevity and the durability of the conversation of the ceramic coating. In many ways, the general public outside of the detailing industry and outside of the detailing world is largely unaware, I've found, of the fact that there are 2-year, 3-year, 5-year coatings, and now with the graphene coatings talking about even 10 years, which of course is up for debate. But the general public is very unaware that products like this and kind of even the possibility of having a 3-year coating on their paint, the fact that that even exists is actually news to them. And so they get very excited about it as you break that down in detail. And that is the one variable I would focus on more than anything else in that pre-ceramic sort of selling conversation. It will really help you. Now, on to the ceramic coating itself. This is a ceramic coating from, it's a C-quartz coating here, and you will see this is not an SiO2 coating. This is a TiO2 coating. So rather than the silicon dioxide, we're looking at titanium dioxide. Now, this does come with a sort of what I would call an all-in-one kit. It comes with the applicator. It comes with plenty of suede applicator applicators. So all you're going to need to use is the microfiber towels. Now, as we did with everything in this video, I want to break down the specific context of the coating before we get into any of the business aspects of this. Now, the directions do say to apply basically 2 lines of the coating to the suede applicator on the block there, and that's going to give you plenty to work with the first time around. I'm going to let it sit on the paint around 60 seconds actually, and it's going to vary because this is the first time I've used this coating. So in many ways, this is my first time becoming aware and sort of familiar with this coating, but I did, of course, read the manufacturer's directions very specifically, as you always want to do with a ceramic coating in particular. We're also going to put 2 coats of this coating on. You can apply the second coat after the first coat has had 60 minutes to cure to the paint, but we're only going to show applying 1 coat in this video because, let's be honest, how exciting is it really to watch me apply 2 different coatings on top of each other? We're going to get all the info we need and the visual aspect we need just from watching it happen one time. Now, there's several different notes to make about this coating as you guys watch me apply it here. First of all, I am using microfiber towels that are edgeless microfiber towels, multi-purpose microfiber towels from the Rag company. These I buy in bulk. I always keep them on me. They're completely virgin. They're completely new. Whenever I'm doing paint correction, polishing, and applying a ceramic coating, I only use fresh, completely new, never used microfiber towels. I never use anything less. Once again, the directions say to apply 2 different lines on the applicator, so I make sure I apply 2 lines of the coating, and very simply, we're going to apply it to the hood first. You can see I'm using this crosshatch pattern, as is very standard with any ceramic coating in any from any brand, any company. We're going to make sure that we get an even spread here. Now, this coating does tack up very quickly. What I mean when I say tack up, if you're unfamiliar with it, is essentially the way a ceramic coating works, and you can kind of see it in different parts of the video as we go through it. You can see that sort of oily, sort of slick, I think oily is probably the best word, that oily, slick appearance on the car paint here. And as I go in the crosshatch pattern, you can see the different streaks and the lines that it makes. As those lines or those streaks become more apparent, in a sense, that is actually the tacking up of the ceramic coating. And essentially what's happening is it's flashing, it's curing to the paint. And that is, in essence, the time where it's time to take it off. Now, I am using 2 different microfiber towels to take it off, even though they are the same color. They're both the same type of microfiber towel. A lot of guys prefer to use a sort of plush microfiber towel in the second stage of buffing off the coating. And while I do that sometimes and have done it in many ceramic coatings in the past, I actually also like to use sort of the same multi-purpose microfiber towel for both of these because it does make it very easy to pull the coating off and essentially bring out the shine as well. I don't see any big difference using a higher GSM or plusher towel for that second wipe down. With this particular GoPro shot, you can really see the distinction and the contrast, the juxtaposition of the color, that darker color of the coating on the paint. And you can see I'm moving in that crosshatch pattern. So once again, just check out more or less the edges of the rows that we're putting on the paint because you can see in the edges that tacking up, what I'm talking about, sort of visual aspect even more so. Now, as I wipe off the coating, there's a couple things to note. Number one, this coating, again, cures. I let it cure to the paint for about 60 seconds. At times, I let it cure for about 90 seconds. In fact, at times, I let it cure for about 2 minutes to a little over 2 minutes. Over 2 minutes is absolutely too long for this coating, but once again, I experiment a little bit anytime I use a new coating that I've never had my hands on before, just so I can get really familiar with it. And at times, I like to sort of test the bounds of the directions, just again, because I like to make sure I'm very familiar with it. So this particular coating is, number one, very easy to wipe off. However, not so easy to wipe off where I would suggest this coating for beginners. So I will say, this is not the coating I would suggest for beginners if you have never applied ceramic coatings to paint before, and if you don't have a fair amount of experience in the ceramic coating world. However, all things considered, it actually is fairly easy to wipe off. Now, as I wipe it off, I want you guys to notice a few things. Generally speaking, when it comes to the removal of a ceramic coating, I like to go outside in, kind of like a puzzle. When you're building a puzzle, you always start with the border pieces first because it sets you up a sort of foundation to finish the rest of the puzzle. That's essentially how I like to wipe off ceramics. Now, I don't do it at every point in this video. Sometimes my hand's a little tired and I'm switching hands and doing different things. However, I like to go kind of borders and outside in. That way, you're not pushing the coating outwards where you either haven't applied it or have already applied it. And in some sense, you do sort of risk some high spots, which is why you're going to want some good studio lighting, like I've brought with me my mobile lighting. In light of all of that, I will say this particular coating was not at all sort of what I would call prone to high spots. It was very, very easy to use. Once again, I would put a little justification there, a qualification saying, yes, I think you do need to have some experience with some ceramic coatings if you're going to apply this one. But all things considered, it was actually very, very straightforward and not at all prone to being very difficult to take off, and even more so, not at all prone to high spots. Now, when it comes to building the ceramic coating aspect or category of your business, one of the most important things that you are going to need to prioritize is getting content and getting customer testimonials and reviews who you have coated their vehicles in the past. This is one of the most powerful, in my opinion, pieces of content that you can actually show customers. So of course, I gain content all the time, and I have different systems of gaining content, and I have a team around me that helps me get content because I'm also running an online business. But for detailers who are building out the ceramic coating part of their business, and this is new to you, and you want more customers in this vein, and you're trying to build this up, one of the most powerful things that I was able to do, particularly a few years ago, is actually build up a bank of videos, just apart from customer reviews and customer testimonials, that I could actually show customers in real time past times of applying ceramics to the paint, where they could look at it in real time, see what it looked like, see what the process was, understand it in a very visual way, apart from just me verbally explaining it to them. And this was unbelievably helpful. Now, in addition to that, getting customers to make sure you get powerful reviews in this area is going to be extremely, extremely important. Now, just for the rest of this video, just so you guys know, I'm not going to be showing applying every single part of this car, the ceramic to every single part of this car, because we're going to kind of speed things up here in the end. So you are going to see it applied kind of in real time to every area that we are looking at, but just know I'm not skipping parts of the car or anything like that. We're just skipping over certain scenes to make sure we don't make this video 2 hours long, okay? Now, in addition to that, once again, the reason why I say get powerful reviews here is because customers that you spend 2 days, like I'm doing here, on their vehicles, in some ways, you have the right, you have the privilege to ask them to leave a raging review, especially when they're extremely satisfied with the work you've done afterwards, which of course my customer was extremely satisfied. And anyone who applies a ceramic coating the proper way, your customer is going to be raving about you. This is where I would be extremely, extremely intentional. Please take my advice here. I promise you, this is advice. It's worth its weight in gold, okay? Make sure that you get a raving review, and I would actually ask the customer word for word, hey, will you do a review that's a little bit more bulky than just the average review? Can you include words like ceramic coating? Can you include words like auto detailing? In some sense, this is actually going to help optimize your listing from your Google business page to your website to anywhere this review is going to be hosted, Facebook business page. This is going to be something where you can include some keywords where the customer can actually include those keywords, making sure words like ceramic coating, making sure words like Mercedes, black paint, auto detailing, 2 days worth of work, all of those things are actually included here. One of the best strategies that you can implement here as well is actually taking a specific piece of content, taking a final photo of this Mercedes, sending it to the customer and asking them to include that after photo, that final photo of the Mercedes in their review wherever they leave it on Facebook or wherever that is. That's going to beef up this review in a big way and really begin to help build that snowball of momentum that we want to build for these higher ticket offers. So the reason why I say, by the way, just from a psychological perspective, that essentially you kind of have the privilege, you kind of have the right to ask the customer for a really powerful review is because there's actually a cognitive bias called the reciprocation bias, the reciprocity bias. And what this means is that when you go over and above for your customer, or really in any context, when you go over and above for a person, they kind of subconsciously feel indebted to you. And I'm not saying this to be manipulative. I'm not saying for you to use this in any sort of bad way. I'm saying for you to use this in a very honest and integrous way. Well, you've spent 2 days, you've spent a lot of work on their car, and in some ways, even at a subconscious level, even though they're paying you, of course, a fair amount of money to do this, you're out there doing this manual labor, and they're aware of that. And there's something in people that says, man, they're working so hard on my vehicle, and they feel a little bit indebted to you. You can use this to your advantage, not in a manipulative way, not in a dishonest way, but as an opportunity to say, hey, will you specifically, customer A, leave me a really good review? Because again, this was a really long job. You saw what all this entailed. I would really love for you specifically, even over a lot of my other customers, to leave a review that includes these words and kind of in this vein because of this, this, and this. Of course, you're not my average customer. You're not just the interior simple minivan, soccer mom detail, right? This is specific. We can really use a review here from you. Customers understand this. They appreciate this. In fact, this kind of makes them even feel special at times. This is something you want to make sure you are taking advantage of. Now, also in this business vein, because we're talking about this here in the end, I want to talk about something that people bring up a lot of times, and that is, should I be offering my customers a sort of package deal or a discount deal when they do get into this higher ticket ceramic offer? For example, should I maintenance this Mercedes 1 or 2 times, in the next 1 or 2 months after the ceramic is applied for free or for 50% off in order to help incentivize the customer on the front end to say yes to the offer? While this is not something that I've ever personally implemented professionally, I've never really been into discounts, and I'll explain that in just a second. This is absolutely something that works for some people, and a lot of people have experienced a lot of success with this. And so as with anything in the business vein, there's absolutely no reason to pour water on a fire that's already burning. We might as well pour gasoline on it. So if you are in this vein and these particular simple discounts are working really well for you, or doing a maintenance detail for free after the ceramic has been applied, if that's working really well for you and helping convert customers at a really high level, of course this is something you should do. Of course this is something you should dive into, especially because that maintenance exterior detail is going to be very simple, especially the first maintenance detail after the ceramic is applied, especially if this is not the customer's daily driver and it doesn't even get that dirty in the first place. This is something that absolutely can be helpful. One of the reasons, just from a business perspective, and maybe even deeper psychological perspective, because we're also in that vein as well, it's worth talking about. The reason why I really have never done discounts in my business, because of course you have people who ask, hey, if I bring you 3 vehicles, can you do 1 for 50% off? And I've never done discounts simply because of this kind of saying that, and I'm butchering this saying, but people say, if you don't value your time, nobody else will. And this is very true in the detailing world. One of the ways that I've always looked at my detailing business is very simple and straightforward, but it's this. Detailing is very labor intensive, and jobs like this can be very, very difficult. And the last thing I want to do is put a discounted price or a discounted option with this higher ticket offer, or really any of my services, that would indicate to the customer that it's not quite as valuable as I'm saying it is. Essentially, I'm dropping my price and giving them an option to pay less for a service that it's not going to take me less time, it's not going to take me less focus, it's not going to take me less product, and it's not going to take me less energy. And in some ways, I think this is actually incentivizing the customer the wrong way. Now, once again, if you're in the beginning stages of your business, there's a bit of a different perspective to take on. However, when you have any sort of established reputation, I would advise against this. In another way, getting a little bit psychological again, when you do not offer discounts and you actually blatantly, not rudely, but straightforwardly say no to customers when they ask for discounts, you do in some ways introduce scarcity into the marketplace. And essentially the customer thinks, oh, they don't need my business. They're not desperate for my money. What's really interesting is there's been a lot of studies showing that people really fear loss, but what's even more interesting is people really deeply fear even potential loss, meaning losing something that you don't even have yet. And this can be really used to your advantage in the detailing world, and particularly with higher ticket offers with ceramic, sort of oriented parts of your business. Sort of talking to customers in a way that says, hey, I don't have to apply the ceramic. I don't have to maintenance the vehicle. Sort of playing the card of non-desperation is something I would highly suggest, not only in the ceramic part of your business, but of course in every area of your business that you can, as long as it's appropriate. But essentially, guys, I hope that makes sense. That's kind of the reason why I don't like using this discounted approach. I don't think it's worth it for me to discount. I don't think it's a win-win, and I also don't think that it sets up the right perspective and really future relationship, which is what I'm most concerned about with my customers when I am discounting. I want to make sure that I don't ever treat my customers as disposable, because I am looking to funnel customers into my maintenance plan at every level. So discounting things really does not set up the future relationship that I want with my customers really in any way whatsoever. So guys, this is really the full application. You can see here we're coming to the last sort of fender here, and what I'm going to be moving to next is the windows, wheels, and tires. So just to jump back into the products and the detailing side here, just so you guys know, the roof of this Mercedes is totally glass. There's no painted surface or anything like that on the roof. And because of that, we actually are going to be applying a traditional glass ceramic to the roof, but not in this particular instance. We're going to wait just a little bit before we put it on. So I am going to be using just a spray ceramic on the roof, as well as the wheels, as a sort of placeholder for the time being, just so you guys know. Now I'm going to finish up here with the front bumper and make sure that the ceramic covers not only the front bumper, the painted pieces, the chrome pieces, but also the headlights as well before we move to anything else. And really the last thing that I want to note in a sort of exaggerative and sort of ultra emphasized or highlighted sense in the business sense regarding the ceramic coatings is ceramic coatings are really what I would call the best way to really optimize your business to not treat customers as disposable, which is what so many detailers do, and I think probably why so many detailers fail in this business, because essentially their business is set up in a way that only is allowed to make more money as they get more customers. And in any sort of business 101 class, you're always going to learn that it is always easier to do business, make more money, increase profitability by working with customers with whom you are already working with or have already done business with than it is to go out and try to find new customers. And so while it is important to, of course, have a healthy flow of new customers into your business, particularly when you're beginning, because I actually rarely take new customers. I might take just a few a year. But until you get to that point, it is, of course, very important to have that flow, but always making sure that you've created a funnel that will actually allow customers to turn into repeat customers so that you can build a business based on recurring revenue. That is what you want to create in the detailing world, recurring revenue. And that's actually why I created the Detailing Profits Masterclass, which is my online program. It's actually not open right now. We don't know when we're going to open it in the future. It's totally closed. We had a bunch of people get in with the launch earlier about a month ago, but unfortunately, that is not open right now. But guys, if you want to actually be a part of that and be notified when we do open the online program back up, where you will learn how to create a detailing business that does anywhere between $2,000 to $5,000 a month in recurring revenue from maintenance clients, then make sure you go below and join that waiting list, because you'll be asked to put your email in. And if you put your email in, then I will be able to notify you when we open the course back up. Now, outside of that, if you want to check out any of the tools and products used in this video, including the ceramic coating and paint correction tools and products, go below in the YouTube description box, and I will list those out in a very organized way. If you're not yet subscribed to the Wilson Auto Detailing channel, but you love content just like this about products and how to make money and be profitable in this business, then hit the subscribe button. And guys, thank you for watching. Let's go ahead and take a look at the after result of this Mercedes.